People ask me all the time why I don't tell more people about this place. And the honest answer is for years, I didn't want to. I kept it to myself on purpose because once a thing gets out, it changes. But I'm 69 now, and there's something about being 69 that makes you want to say the things you meant to say. So here I am saying it. My name is Colin. I retired in Chiang Mai 12 years ago at 57. My old friends back in Manchester think I got lucky. I didn't get lucky. I made a choice, and it is the reason I'm still here. Before I tell you anything else, I want to give you the honest version of who I was in 2012, because it matters. I grew up in a terraced house in Levenshulme, South Manchester. My dad was a bus driver for Manchester Corporation, then Greater Manchester Transport, then Stagecoach. Same job for 38 years across 3 owners. My mom worked at the checkout at a Quick Save for 24 years and then at a Netto after Quick Save shut. I was the youngest of 4. We had gravy on chips for tea more often than we had meat, and my dad drank 2 pints of mild on a Friday night at the Farmer's Arms and fell asleep in his chair watching Match of the Day. I left school at 16 with 5 O-levels I never used. I did an apprenticeship at British Rail as a signaling technician. I stayed with them through the sectorization, through privatization, through rail track, through Network Rail. 36 years on the railways, from 1976 to 2012. I worked signals on the West Coast main line for most of it. Nights mostly. I know the sound of a pendolino going through Wigan at 3 in the morning better than I know most people I ever met. I married Deborah in 1981. We met at a wedding in Stockport. She was a cousin of a bloke I worked with. She was a hairdresser. She had her own small salon on Slade Lane by the time she was 28, 3 chairs, 1 apprentice, open 6 days a week. She worked harder than I did, and I worked hard. We had 1 son, Andrew, in 1984. We bought a small semi in Burnage in 1985 for £28,000. We split up in 2005. I want to be honest about that because it is part of why I left. It was not a big row. It was not another woman or another man. We had, over about 6 years, become polite strangers who happened to live in the same house. Deborah said it out loud one Sunday morning at the kitchen table. She said, "Colin, when was the last time either of us was properly happy in this house?" I could not answer her. She could not either. We sold the house that November. She kept the salon and moved into a flat in Didsbury. I took a smaller flat in Levenshulme, closer to work. Andrew was 21 and at university in Leeds when we split. He took it harder than either of us expected. He did not talk to me for almost 18 months. I understood it. I did not fight it. When he was ready, he was ready. I was 50 when the divorce went through. I still had 7 years on the railways. I went to work, I did my nights, I ate ready meals. I paid down the mortgage on the flat. I did not date anybody. I did not want to. I had a routine that was small and quiet and got me through. And I told myself that was enough. Andrew and I started talking properly again in 2008 when he moved back to Manchester for a job. He was 24. He came round to the flat on a Thursday night with a 6-pack of Boddingtons and he said, "Dad, I have been a prick. Can we start again?" I said, "Son, yes, that was that. That was our whole reconciliation. He and I are direct people. We had a curry the next Saturday and never brought it up again." Andrew met a girl called Rebecca in 2010. Nice girl. Nurse. They got engaged in 2011. Here is where the story starts to turn, and I want to walk you through it in the honest order because the honest order matters. In early 2012, I was 56. I had 6 months left on the railways before I could take my full pension. I had been doing nights for so long my body did not know what daylight was. My back had gone in 2009 and never fully come back. I had 2 blood pressure tablets a day. I was going to retire in October 2012 on a network rail pension of about £17,000 a year, plus a small additional voluntary contribution pot I had built up, plus my state pension when it kicked in at 65. On paper, it was fine. In practice, it was going to be a small flat in Levenshulme, a bus pass, and 1 holiday a year to somewhere I could afford. Then in March 2012, a bloke I worked with called Ray retired at 55 and went to Thailand. Not on holiday, to leave. Ray was the union rep on our depot for 8 years. Big man, loud, opinionated, drank halves because he said pints slowed him down. He was Anglo-Thai. His mom was Thai. His dad was English. He had grown up half in Chiang Mai and half in Preston. And he had been talking about going back for a decade. At his leaving do at the Grey Horse in Altrancham, he pulled me aside at about 11 o'clock. He was 3 pints in and he was not drunk. Ray never got drunk. He looked at me and he said, "Colin, listen to me. You are going to retire in 6 months. You're going to sit in that flat in Levenshulme. You're going to watch the telly and you're going to go to the pub on a Friday. And in 2 years you will not know what day of the week it is. Do you hear me?" I said, "Ray, I hear you." He said, "Come out to Chiang Mai. Come out for 2 weeks. That is all I'm asking. Come out and stay with me and see it. If you hate it, come home. But come and see it." I said, "Ray, I have never been out of Europe." He said, "That is precisely why you should come." I did not go straight away. I want to tell you that because I know the neat version of this story skips the hesitation. I did not go for 8 months. I finished my time on the railways. I retired on the 18th of October 2012. I sat in that flat in Levenshulme for a full winter. I did exactly what Ray said I would do. I watched telly. I went to the pub. I did not know what day of the week it was. In February of 2013, I sat in the flat one Sunday afternoon. It was pouring with rain outside. The heating was on. I had eaten a Sunday roast at the Farmer's Arms at lunchtime alone, which is a specific kind of Sunday for a divorced 57-year-old man, and I was reading a paper I did not care about. I opened my laptop and I emailed Ray. I said, "Ray, is that offer still open?" He wrote back within an hour. He said, "Colin, book the flight. I will pick you up." I flew out of Manchester on the 14th of March 2013. I want to say something about that flight because it is the moment my old life ended and I did not know it yet. I sat in a window seat somewhere over Central Asia at 3 in the morning with the little cabin lights turned down. Everybody around me was asleep. I looked out the window at the dark and I saw the lights of a city far below, tiny, orange, spread out across a landscape I could not name. And I thought, I have lived on this planet for 57 years, and I have never seen a city from above at night that was not English or Spanish. What have I been doing? Ray met me at Chiang Mai International Airport at 11 at night. He was wearing shorts and a Manchester City shirt because Ray, whatever else you can say about him, has never let anybody forget where he's from. He hugged me at the arrival's gate. He drove me back to his house in a neighborhood called Nong Hoi in an old Toyota pickup. The windows were open. The night was warm and thick. I could smell charcoal from somebody's grill and something sweet from a flower I did not know. I sat in the passenger seat in a fleece I had put on for the plane, and I said, "Ray, it is warm here." Ray said, "Colin, it is always warm here. That is the point." His wife Mally was waiting at the door. She had made a pot of chicken soup, ginger and lemongrass, and a soft egg. She fed me at midnight at their kitchen table. She spoke to me in careful English and she said, "Uncle Colin, Ray has been talking about you for years. Welcome, you are family now." I sat at that kitchen table at midnight in a country I had never seen in daylight, eating soup made by a woman I had known for 12 minutes, who had already called me family. And I want to tell you what I felt. I felt something in my chest let go that I had not known was clenched. I had been walking around Manchester for 8 years since the divorce, holding something tight, and I did not know I was doing it until I sat at Molly's kitchen table and it let go. Ray drove me around Chiang Mai for the next 14 days. He did not sell it to me, he just showed me. Watts, where old monks nodded to me on the street. Markets where the fruit was piled higher than my head and cost pennies. A hospital called Bangkok Hospital, where the lobby looked like a nice hotel and a full checkup cost me about £12. A neighborhood called Santitham, where the rents were absurd. A pub called The Dukes, where 6 British expats bought me pints at lunchtime and told me their stories, and none of them was moaning. One of them, a bloke called Nigel from Bristol, said to me, "Colin, if you catch yourself starting a sentence with 'in England we would have,' you have to buy the next round." On day 12, Ray took me up Doi Thep, the temple on the mountain west of the city. 306 steps. I went slow because of my back. He went slow with me. At the top, standing on the terrace looking out over the whole city as the afternoon light turned everything gold, Ray said, "Colin, you are quiet." I said, "Ray, I'm thinking." He said, "About what?" I said, "About the fact that I have to fly home in 2 days and I do not want to." He said, "Then don't." I said, "Ray, I have a flat." He said, "You have a flat? It is not alive. It is a flat." I stood there for a long time and I did not say anything. The bells at the temple started ringing behind us. A dog barked somewhere far below. The sun kept going down. I flew home 2 days later. I gave myself 6 weeks to think about it. I did not tell anybody except Andrew. I met him at a pub in Sholton on the second Sunday after I got back, and I told him the whole thing. He listened. He drank his pint. He put it down. He said, "Dad, are you asking my permission?" I said, "Andrew, no. I'm asking whether you will hate me if I go." He said, "Dad, I will hate you if you don't." I gave myself 6 weeks and I used every day of them. I want to walk you through it because a lot of you sitting where I was sitting will need to hear the practical shape of it, not just the emotional one. Week 1, I did the maths properly. I sat at the kitchen table in that Levenshulme flat with a legal pad and I wrote down every source of income I had coming and every expense I had going out. My network rail pension, £17,000 a year paid monthly, roughly £1,420 a month. My AVC pot, about £54,000, which I could draw down at a rate of my choosing. My state pension, still 8 years away at 65. The flat in Levenshulme, mortgage-free by then, worth about £98,000 on a good day in that market. My monthly costs in Manchester were running about £1,100. Council tax, gas, electric, water, TV license, food, phone, broadband, bus pass, occasional pint at the Farmer's Arms. On £17,000 a year, I was fine and small and quiet, exactly what Ray had described. Week 2, I did the maths again, but for Chiang Mai. Ray sent me his actual budget by email. 20,000 baht a month for a 2-bedroom house with a garden in Nong Hoi. 3,000 baht a month for electric with the aircon on at night. 600 baht for water and Wi-Fi. 4,000 baht for eating out most nights of the week. 2,000 baht at the market for fruit and eggs and coffee. Everything else, another 3,000 baht. About 33,000 baht a month for life. £660 at the exchange rate at the time. £660 a month. Against my 17,000 a year, that left me almost £800 a month clear. To save, to travel, to send home if Andrew ever needed it. On my network rail, pension alone, without touching the AVC, without ever taking a penny of the state pension when it kicked in. I sat at that kitchen table with the legal pad in front of me, and I said out loud to an empty flat, "That cannot be right." I ran it again. It was right. Week 3, I told Deborah. I want to be honest about this because she and I had not been proper friends in years, but we were on speaking terms, and Andrew was our son, and she deserved to hear it from me. I called her on a Wednesday evening. She picked up on the 3rd ring. I said, "Deb, I need to tell you something, and I would rather tell you now than have Andrew tell you." She said, "Colin, what have you done?" I said, "I have not done anything. I am thinking of moving to Thailand." Long pause. Then she laughed. Not a mean laugh, a surprised laugh. She said, "Colin, are you having a midlife crisis at 57? I said, "Deb, maybe, probably." She said, "Well, good. It is about bloody time." I did not know what to say. I had expected her to be angry or worried or something. I had not expected that. She said, "Colin, listen, you and me did not work. We both know that. But I always thought you were a good man who had gone a bit quiet somewhere in your 40s. If Thailand wakes you up, go and do it. Send Andrew a postcard. Do not disappear on him." I said, "Deb, I would never." She said, "I know you wouldn't. Now go." Week 4, I told my brothers and my sister. My sister Mary is 2 years older than me and lives in Bury. She cried on the phone, not because she was upset with me, because she said she had known for years I was not properly living and she had not known how to say it. My older brothers, David and Neil, both took it in stride. David said, Colin, off to Thailand, my God. Send us a photo of the food." Neil said, "About time you did something interesting, you soft sod." Week 5, I put the flat on the market. That was the point of no return, and I knew it when I signed the paperwork with the estate agent. She was a young woman called Lauren, 28 maybe, and she was very professional, but at the end of the meeting she said, "Mr. Winters, can I ask where you are moving to?" I said, "Thailand." She looked at me for a second. Then she said, "Good for you." Week 6, I applied for a new passport because my old one was 3 years from expiry and I wanted a full 10 years on it. I applied for the Thai non-immigrant OA retirement visa. I was 57, over the age minimum of 50. I had the income requirement covered easily on my network rail pension. Ray walked me through every form. His cousin was a visa agent in Chiang Mai, and she handled the Thai side for a small fee. The whole visa cost me about £400 all in. and it came back stamped in my passport 8 weeks later. The flat sold in 5 weeks for £92,000. After the estate agent and the solicitor and everything else, I walked away with just under £87,000. I put 50,000 into an ISA. I kept 20,000 in a UK current account to draw on. I transferred £15,000 to a new Thai bank account Ray had helped me set up, and I kept 2,000 in cash on me. I sold the furniture. I sold most of my books. I kept a small box of things that mattered. Photos of Andrew as a boy. A watch my dad had left me. A first edition Alan Silito my mom had bought me for my 18th birthday. A photo of me and Deborah on our wedding day that I am not sure why I kept, but I kept. I flew out of Manchester on the 11th of September 2013. Andrew drove me to the airport. He walked me all the way to security. He hugged me and stepped back and looked at me and he said, "Dad, do not die over there without telling me first." I said, "I promise, and you will come and see me." He said, "Try and stop me." I got on the plane, Manchester to Doha to Bangkok to Chiang Mai, 19 hours door to door. Ray picked me up. Molly had made chicken soup again. That is how my second night in Chiang Mai started, the same as the first, at a kitchen table with a bowl of soup in front of me and a woman calling me uncle. Ray had lined up 3 houses for me to look at in the first week, all in the same area as his, Nong Hoi, on the east side of the city, quieter, more Thai than expat, cheaper than the tourist neighborhoods. All within a 15-minute drive of his place and Molly's. The first was a small 2-bedroom with a walled garden, 15,000 baht a month, about £300. All the tiles, a decent kitchen, a covered outdoor area with a hammock. The second was newer, nicer, in a small gated development with a shared pool. 22,000 baht a month, about £440. Air conditioning in every room. A modern kitchen with an actual oven, which is not standard in Thai kitchens. The third was a modest bungalow on a quiet lane, owned by a retired Thai couple who lived next door. 3-bedroom, walled garden with a mango tree and a jackfruit tree, a small covered patio, aircon in the bedrooms only, ceiling fans everywhere else. 18,000 baht a month, about £360, water included, Wi-Fi included. The owners, Kun Prasert and Kun Malai, were 64 and 62, spoke careful English, and had raised 2 daughters in that house. I stood in that garden and I looked at the mango tree and I said to Ray, "This one." Ray said, "Colin, you're sure? It is the biggest. Do you need 3 bedrooms?" I said, "Ray, Andrew is going to visit. Deborah might visit. Marie will visit. My brothers will visit. I need 3 bedrooms." Ray laughed. He said, "Colin, you're already planning the visits and you have not unpacked." I said, "Ray, 12 years of nights on the West Coast main line. I have been planning things a long time. Let me have this." I moved in on my 4th day in Thailand. Ray drove my 2 suitcases over in the pickup. Melly came half an hour later with a small pot of chicken soup and 3 small clay pots for the patio. She set them next to the mango tree. She pointed at each one and she said, "Basil, chili, mint, water every 2 days, not more." I sat on that patio that first afternoon and I looked at 3 plants I had not known I owned, and I said out loud to nobody, "Well, all right then, here we go. I want to walk you through the first year because it is where the shape of a life takes hold, and it is where most people who fail at this fail. Some do it in year 1, because they treat Chiang Mai like a holiday and never really move in. Some do it in year one because they treat it like a punishment and never let themselves settle. I did neither, and I want to tell you why. Because it is not a matter of luck. It is a matter of a few specific choices. Choice one: I did not drink much. I want to say that plain. Ray does not drink much either. Marley never has. The pub was for Tuesday afternoons at the Duke's, 1 pint, sometimes two, and home. I saw a lot of blokes go under in Chiang Mai in my first 2 years because the beer was cheap and their days were empty and they filled the days with beer. I never let myself do that. My back was already ruined. My blood pressure was already high. I was not adding a third thing to that pile. Choice two: I learned to say hello to my neighbors properly on day 2. Sawadee krap for a man. I got Ray to teach me the tones. I got the tones wrong for the first 6 months, and Kun Malai laughed at me every morning and corrected me the same way you would correct a child. But I said it every morning, to her, to Kun Prasert, to the woman who sold sticky rice on the corner, to the fruit lady at the market. I want to tell you that 6 months of saying Sawadee krap with the wrong tones did more for how I was treated in my neighborhood than anything else I did in my first year. Choice 3. I went to Ray's Tuesday pub group at the Duke's, but I did not build my whole life around it. 6 pints on a Tuesday afternoon was not going to make me a Chiang Mai resident. Learning the vendors at my local market was going to make me a Chiang Mai resident. Being on nodding terms with the monks who walked past my gate at 6 in the morning was going to make me a Chiang Mai resident. I spent time on that, on purpose. Choice 4. I called Andrew every Sunday, without fail. Sometimes it was a 5-minute call. Sometimes it was an hour. But every Sunday, I did that not just for him. I did it for me. I had watched too many blokes at the Duke's slowly cut the call with their kids back home because they did not want to face the guilt of being far away. I was not going to do that. Andrew came out to visit me in March 2014, 6 months in, and Rebecca came with him. He walked into my house in Nong Hoi and he looked around at the garden and the mango tree and the little patio, and he said, "Dad, this is a proper life." I said, "Andrew, that is what I was hoping." He said, "Well, you did it." He stayed 2 weeks. On the second Sunday at the top of Doi Sothep at sunset, he said something I still think about. He said, "Dad, Mom was right. You had gone quiet somewhere in your 40s. You have come back." I said, "Andrew, thank you for telling me." He said, "Dad, thank you for coming back. I want to walk you through the first 3 years because that is where the real settling happened. And I want to be honest about the hard parts, not just the good ones. Year 1 was learning the shape of a life. I have already told you about that. Ray and Marley, the Dukes on Tuesdays, Andrew's visit in March 2014, the mango tree, Sawadee krap with the wrong tones. I ended year 1 healthier than I had been in a decade. My blood pressure came down 11 points in the first 6 months, just from walking every day and eating properly. My back was still my back, but it hurt less because I was not doing nights and sleeping in the wrong shape. Year 2 is when it got harder before it got easier. I want to tell you why, because most of the videos on YouTube skip this part. In April of 2015, my mother died. She was 82. She had been in a home in Bury for 2 years by then with dementia. Mary had been visiting her every week. I had been calling every Sunday, though by the last 6 months, she did not know it was me on the phone. She had a stroke on a Tuesday night in April and she was gone by Wednesday morning. I flew home for the funeral. I had not been back to Manchester in 19 months. I stayed with Marie in Bury for 8 days. And I want to tell you the thing that surprised me, because I did not expect it. I did not want to go back to Chiang Mai, not right away. I sat in Marie's front room at 11 at night on the day of the funeral. It was raining outside the way it only rains in Bury in April. That slow, steady rain that comes down for 6 hours at a time. My brothers David and Neil had gone home. Andrew had driven back to Manchester. It was just me and Marie and 2 glasses of red wine on the coffee table. Marie said, Colin, are you all right? I said, Marie, I do not know. She said, you look tired. I said, Marie, I feel guilty. She said, guilty for what, love? I said, for being in Chiang Mai when Mom went into the home. For being in Chiang Mai when she stopped knowing my voice. For being in Chiang Mai for the last 2 years of her life while you drove to Bury every week. Marie was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that I think saved me from making the wrong decision. She said, Colin, Mom was in a home. She did not know any of us by the end. Me being there once a week did not fix that. You being there once a week would not have fixed that. And Mom, before the dementia, when she still knew what was what, Mom said to me once, and I am not making this up, our Colin has finally started living. Do not let him feel bad about that. I looked at my sister across the coffee table. I said, Marie, she said that. Mary said, she said it 3 times, love. She meant it. I flew back to Chiang Mai a week later. I want to tell you what I did the first morning I was back. I got up at 6. I made coffee. I sat on the patio and I watched the sun come up over the mango tree. I said out loud to nobody, Mom, thanks for saying that. I heard you. Year 2 also had a health scare that I want to tell you about because it is the exact thing that keeps most of you awake at night about the idea of moving abroad. In September of 2015, I fell off my scooter. I want to be honest about how. I was not going fast. I was pulling out of a side street in Nong Hoi at maybe 15 miles an hour, and I hit a patch of loose gravel and the front wheel went out from under me. I landed on my right side, broke my collarbone, grazed my forearm badly, bumped my head, though I was wearing a helmet, thank God. A Thai woman I did not know pulled over in her car within about 90 seconds. She was maybe 40, in a nurse's uniform, on her way to work. She parked, got out, examined me on the pavement, called Ray from my phone, which had somehow survived the fall, called an ambulance in Thai, and stayed with me until the ambulance arrived. She followed us to Bangkok Hospital in her car. She sat in the waiting area for 2 hours until Ray got there. Then she introduced herself to him, made sure I was in the system properly, and only then did she leave for work. 2 hours late. Her name was Kun Ploy. She was a nurse at a private clinic in the city. Ray got her number. He sent her flowers the next week. She refused any money. She said, and Ray translated for me later, in Thailand we help. That is all she said. In Thailand we help. The bill at Bangkok Hospital, including x-rays, the collarbone strap, the dressing on my forearm, painkillers and a follow-up appointment 2 weeks later, was 11,400 baht, about 230 pounds in 2015. I had by then bought health insurance with a Thai company called Pacific Cross. My premium at 59 was about 70,000 baht a year, roughly 1,400 pounds. Pacific Cross covered 80% of the bill. My out of pocket for the accident was about 46 pounds. I sat at my kitchen table that evening with the receipt in front of me, and I thought about what that would have been on the NHS. It would have been free, obviously. It would also have been a 6-hour wait in the A&E at Manchester Royal, an X-ray the next day, a follow-up in 3 weeks, and a physiotherapy waiting list that would have run 4 months. In Chiang Mai, I was seen in 15 minutes, X-rayed immediately, strapped up within an hour, and had my follow-up booked before I left the hospital. I want to be careful here. I am not knocking the NHS. I still believe in it. I paid into it for 38 working years, and I would still fight anybody who tried to dismantle it. But there is a specific truth about private health care in a middle-income country that is worth telling. It is fast, it is professional, and if you have decent insurance, it is affordable in a way most Brits do not realize is possible. Year 3, 2016 is when I met Nan. I want to tell you about this carefully because I know how these stories can sound, and I am going to give you the honest version. Nan is Thai, full Thai. Her family is from Chiang Rai originally, but she has lived in Chiang Mai since she was 20. When I met her, she was 52. I was 59. She was divorced. She had 2 grown daughters. She had been an accountant for a small trading company in the city for 23 years. Her English was good, not perfect. My Thai was terrible, still is. I met her because her older sister Pim was a friend of Meili's. There was a birthday party at Ray and Meili's house one Saturday in February 2016 for one of Meili's cousins. About 40 people. I was there because I was always at Ray and Meili's for these things. Nan came with her sister. She was helping Pim in the kitchen because that is what Thai women do at family parties. Nan and I got introduced, said hello, sat next to each other by accident because the plastic chairs got rearranged, and ended up talking for 2 hours. She did not flirt with me. I want to say that plain. She was polite and careful and asked me sensible questions about the railways and Manchester. I asked her about accountants in Thailand, which sounds boring, but I am a signaling technician, so it seemed reasonable to ask an accountant about accountancy. She laughed at one of my jokes about British trains, which are not funny to anyone who has not been on one, and I noticed her. Nothing happened at the party. Nothing happened for 3 months after. I saw her twice more at Ray and Molly's during that time. We talked each time. Then in May, Molly invited me to a lunch at her sister's restaurant, and Nan was there. And afterwards, we walked back to our cars together, and I asked her if she would come for coffee sometime. Not dinner, coffee. On purpose. She said yes. We had coffee 3 times over the next month. On the 3rd time, at a little place in the old city called Rister 82, I said, Nan, I would like to see you properly. Would that be all right with you? She said, Colin, I need to tell you something first. I said, all right. She said, in Thailand, when a Thai woman starts to see an older foreign man, everybody in her family and everybody in her town assumes it is for money. My daughters will assume it. My sister will not. My mother is dead, so it will not matter to her. My colleagues will assume it. I have watched other women deal with this, and it is not easy. So before we go further, I need you to hear me say this. I have my own house. I have my own job. I have my own pension coming from my company. I do not need your money. I will not take your money. If we do this, We do this properly and separately. Do you understand? I sat there in that coffee shop and I looked at her and I thought about how much I had liked her since the birthday party, and I said, Nan, I understand, and I will tell you the same. I did not come to Thailand to buy a wife. I came here to have a life. If we have one together, we have one together as two grown adults. Nothing else. She nodded. She said, Good. Then yes. I want to tell you that 8 years on, none of that has changed. Nan owns her house on the other side of the city. She lived in it until 2020. She kept working until she took early retirement at 58. We split every meal we eat out down the middle. We took a holiday to Phuket in 2019 and we each paid our own flight and our own room in a shared suite. In 2020, she moved into my house in Nong Hoi and she rents her house out to a young Thai couple. She kept the rent. We split the household bills evenly. When Andrew and Rebecca had a baby in 2021, a little girl called Olivia, Nan and I both flew back to Manchester for the christening and we each bought our own ticket. I do not care what the assumption is when people meet us in Chiang Mai. I know what my relationship is. Nan knows. That is enough. Ray died in 2022, 9 years after picking me up at the airport. Heart attack. He was 67. Fast. Mally found him on the sofa in the front room at 6 in the morning. I got the call at 6:30. I was at their house by 7. I stayed with Mally for 3 days. Andrew flew out for the funeral, which I did not ask him to do. He did it because he had met Ray twice and knew what Ray meant to me. I want to tell you what Ray said to me at his kitchen table the last time I saw him, which was 6 days before he died. He said, Colin, 9 years ago I told you to come, and you came. And I want you to know something. It is not just that you came for you. You came for me too. Every bloke I dragged out here who made it, I felt like I gave the world back a little bit of what I owed it. I am glad you made it. I said, Ray, you gave me my life back. He said, Colin, don't be daft. You pick it up. I just handed you the bag. I want to skip ahead to the years that made me want to keep this whole thing a secret, because they are the ones that changed me most, and they are the ones that hardest to explain to anybody back home without sounding like I have gone soft. Nan and I had been together about 18 months when I made my first proper mistake in Thailand, and I want to tell you about it because it is the kind of mistake that the honest videos never talk about. In late 2017, a man I had met at the Dukes, an Australian called Ken, approached me about an investment. Ken was 68, had been in Chiang Mai for 6 years, seemed steady. He had a friend, another expat, who was starting up a small guest house on Koh Lanta, a beach island in the south. They needed one more small investor. £20,000 would get me a 15% stake and a nice quarterly return. Ken had already put in 50,000 himself. He showed me the paperwork. It looked professional. I did not tell Nan. That was the first mistake. I did not tell Ray either, which was the second. I told Andrew because I was proud of myself for finding an investment opportunity. And Andrew said, Dad, is it in your name? Is the property in your name? I said, Andrew, it cannot be. Foreigners cannot own land in Thailand outright. It is in a Thai partner's name with a lease back to us. Andrew said, Dad, who's the Thai partner? I said, Ken's friend's girlfriend. There was a very long silence on the phone. Andrew said, Dad, I love you. Do not do this. I did it anyway. I want to tell you that plain. I transferred £20,000 out of my ISA. Ken's friend, an Englishman called Trevor, sent me signed paperwork in return. The paperwork was in English. It looked professional. It was, I later found out, worth nothing under Thai law because the underlying structure had been set up wrong on purpose. For 7 months, everything looked fine. I got one quarterly payment of £600 and I was pleased with myself. Then in July of 2018, Trevor stopped answering emails. Ken went to Koh Lanta to check on things. Trevor was gone. The guest house was half built. The Thai partner, Trevor's girlfriend, had sold the land title to a different developer and moved back to her home village. There was no legal recovery. My £20,000 was gone. I lost £20,000 because I was too proud to ask Ray for advice and too embarrassed to tell Nan I was thinking about it. I told Nan the night I found out. I sat at the kitchen table with a beer in my hand and I told her the whole thing. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she said, "Colin, how much?" I said, £20,000, about 900,000 baht. She said, "Can you live without it?" I said, "Yes, I still have my pension. I still have the AVC. I still have the ISA minus this. I'm fine. I'm just angry." She said, "Then you're lucky. Some men here lose everything on things like this. You lost £20,000 and a piece of your pride. That is expensive, but it is not the worst outcome. Now, what did you learn?" I said, "Nan, I learned to tell you before I do anything with money bigger than a scooter." She said, "Good. That is the correct answer." She kissed me on the forehead and she went to bed. She did not bring it up again, not once. I told Ray a week later at the Duke's. He put his pint down and he looked at me and he said, "Colin, you daft old sod. Why did you not ask me?" I said, "Ray, because I was embarrassed." He said, "Colin, that is exactly when you should ask. When you are embarrassed, that is the tell. I have not made a mistake with money that size since. I would not have made this one if I had told Nan or Ray up front. That is the lesson and I am giving it to you for free because I paid £20,000 for it. I want to tell you about Andrew now because he became the reason I ended up staying in Thailand rather than moving back, and I did not see it coming. In early 2019, Andrew called me on a Sunday morning UK time. He said, "Dad, Rebecca and I are trying for a baby." I said, "Son, that is wonderful news." He said, "Dad, I want to ask you something. Would you come home for it? Not for the birth, for the first 3 months after, to help. Rebecca's mom will come for a few weeks, but she works. We could really use you for a longer stretch. Are you willing?" I said, "Andrew, try and stop me." They started trying in the spring of 2019. Rebecca fell pregnant in the autumn. Olivia was born in June of 2020, which is a date some of you will remember means something specific because by then the whole world had shut down and I could not get back to England to be there. I want to tell you honestly how that hit me. I had planned the trip for months. I had booked open-ended flights. I had told Nan the plan. Nan had told me she would be fine on her own for 3 or 4 months, that this was what I should be doing. And then the pandemic hit in March 2020 and Thailand closed its borders and the UK closed its borders and Olivia was born on a Tuesday in June. And I saw her first through a video call on Nan's phone at 8 o'clock at night in Chiang Mai. I sat at the kitchen table with Nan and I watched a video call of my son holding a tiny baby with his eyes wet. and I did not get to hold her, and I could not get to her. Not for 8 months. That period taught me something I did not know before, and I want to give it to you plain. There is a version of living abroad where you convince yourself the distance does not matter because everybody is only a phone call away. That version is a lie. The distance does matter. It matters most when something important is happening and you cannot get on a plane. I want you to hear that if you are thinking about doing what I did, it is the truest hard thing about it, and it does not go away. Nan handled me well during those months. She did not tell me I was being dramatic. She did not tell me it would pass. She just made me eat and made me walk and made me call Andrew every day and made me sit on the patio in the evenings and drink one beer, only one, and then come to bed. I finally got to Manchester in February of 2021. The first month, Thailand opened flights out to fully vaccinated residents, and I saw Olivia for the first time when she was 8 months old. She was already sitting up, she had teeth, she had a laugh. I sat on Andrew and Rebecca's sofa with her on my knee, and I cried like a fool, and Andrew pretended not to see, and Rebecca made tea and did not mention it. I stayed 6 weeks. I did every night feed I could. I changed nappies. I walked the pram round Fallowfield in the rain. I fell in love with my granddaughter the proper way, which is by being tired for her. And I have never regretted a single day of those 6 weeks. I came back to Chiang Mai in April 2021. Nan met me at the airport. She hugged me and she said, "Uncle Colin, was it good?" I said, "Nan, it was the best 6 weeks of my life." She said, "Good. Now you go every year. This is not a question. Every year." I said, "Nan, every year. I have gone every year since. 6 weeks in the spring, most years, sometimes 8. Nan comes with me every second year and stays for 2 weeks and then flies home first because she does not enjoy the English weather, which I understand. Rebecca and Nan get on well. Olivia, who's nearly 4 now, calls her Auntie Nan. She calls me Grandad Colin, always both names, never just Grandad, which Andrew tells me is because when she was 2, she was worried that if she just said Grandad, I would not know which Grandad she meant. She has kept the habit. I want to tell you about the money now because I promised I would, and I always do. By 2020, 7 years in, my network rail pension was still about £17,000 a year, plus the annual increases, which had brought it up to about 19,000. My state pension had kicked in at 65 in 2020, adding another £9,500 a year. I had left my AVC pot untouched. It had grown to about £71,000. My ISA, minus the 20,000 I had lost on Cook Lanta, was worth about £78,000 because I had left it to grow. My monthly income at that point was about £2,370 after tax. My monthly cost in Chiang Mai, even with a partner and a nicer house and health insurance and everything else, was about £840. I was saving £1,500 a month, every month, on top of leaving the AVC and ISA to grow. By 2024, 12 years in, I had over £140,000 in liquid savings that I did not have when I retired. I had gone to Thailand with £87,000 and I was sitting on more than that in additional savings alone 12 years later on a modest signaling technician's pension. That is the compounding effect of low cost of living plus a stable pension plus not being an idiot about investments. I want to say something plain. The money is not the point of this story. It is the shape of the story. It is what makes everything else possible. But the point is, Nan making chicken soup on a Wednesday evening. The point is, Olivia calling me Grandad Colin twice a week on a video call. The point is, Mally, still my closest friend in Chiang Mai 2 years after Ray died, coming for dinner every Sunday because that is what widows and old family friends do here. The point is, Kun Prasert and Kun Malai next door, still there, still renting me the same house at a rent that has gone up twice in 12 years by a total of 2,000 baht. I want to tell you what the last few years have looked like because they are the shape of a life I built by keeping this whole thing quiet. And I want to be honest about why I kept it quiet. Nan and I got married in 2022, about 6 months after Ray died. I want to tell you how that happened because it was not a big romantic gesture. It was quieter than that. We had been together 6 years by then, living together for 2. Nan had lost her mother in 2020 during the pandemic, the same year Olivia was born, and she had said something at the funeral that stayed with me. She had said in front of her sister and her daughters that she was grateful the last 2 years of her mother's life had been calm ones because she had been settled with a good man. That was how she referred to me at her mother's funeral. A good man, not my husband, not my partner, a good man. In Thai culture, that was a specific and careful thing to say, and I heard it. After Ray died in the spring of 2022, I sat on the patio one evening in July and I said to Nan, Nan, I want to marry you. Not because anything is different. Because Ray dying made me think about what I want to have properly on paper if I go before you do. I want you protected. She said, Colin, I do not need the paper. I said, Nan, I know you do not. That is why I want to give it to you. She thought about it for a week. She talked to her daughters. She talked to her sister. Then she came back to me and she said, all right, but small, very small. And we sign a paper first that says my house is mine and your money is yours. And if we split, everything goes back the way it came in. I said, Nan, yes, that is the correct way. We got married at the district office in September of 2022. 6 people. Nan's 2 daughters, her sister Pim, Melly, Andrew, who flew out for it with Rebecca and Olivia, who was 2, and me and Nan. We had a lunch afterwards at Melly's house. Melly made lechon and green curry and a soup that had been Ray's favorite. She cried a bit when she brought the soup out. So did I. So did Nan. Andrew held Olivia on his hip and looked around the room and said quietly to me, Dad, this is a proper family you have made. I said, Andrew, it is. He said, I'm glad you did it. I want to walk you through my normal week now because that is what most of you want to see. And I have not shown it yet. I get up at 5:40 most mornings. Nan gets up at 6. I make coffee for both of us. I sit on the patio with mine and I watch the sun come up over the mango tree. Nan brings hers out and sits next to me and we do not talk much. That is how we start every day. 12 years in Thailand and 8 years with Nan, and we still start every day with coffee on the patio in silence. At 7:30, I walk to a small food cart run by a woman called Auntie Nock. She has been running that cart for 22 years. She sees me and she says, Uncle Colin, late. Sit. I sit. She feeds me rice soup with pork and a soft egg. 40 baht. She has been charging me 40 baht for 6 years and refuses to raise it, even when the price of everything else has gone up. I give her 50. She slides 10 back to me. I put it in my pocket. That is our exchange. It has been our exchange for 6 years. Nan is normally at the market by then. She still cooks most of our meals at home. She has never let me pay for the groceries. That is her contribution to the household, and she does not compromise on it. I walk back. On the way, I pass Uncle Prem, who's 77 now, sitting in front of his gate on a small wooden stool with a cup of coffee. He waves me over. Sometimes we have a conversation. Sometimes we just sit for a bit and drink coffee together and watch the lane wake up. He lost his wife in 2023. I sat with him for a lot of hours in the weeks after. He does not talk about it much. He does not have to. I know what it is, and he knows I know. I read for an hour on the patio. I have got through a lot of books in 12 years. Nigel from the Dukes, who is 80 now and slower than he was, still lends me books when we meet, though he has slowed to one Tuesday a month rather than every week. Beryl from Manchester died in 2021. Terry from Sunderland went home in 2023 to be near his grandchildren after his wife died. Aid from Liverpool is still going. There are 3 younger British blokes at the Dukes now, in their 60s, who took our spots. That is the shape of an expat community. It renews itself. Around 10, I ride my scooter to the market on the other side of Nong Hoi to see the fruit lady. She sets aside the good mangoes for me. She has been setting aside the good mangoes for me for 8 years. I pay her 60 baht for a bag she should charge me 100 for. I go to the pub on Tuesdays. First Tuesday of the month now, not every week. I have my 1 pint. I do not moan. I go to Doi Suthep with Nan on the last Sunday of every month. 306 steps up. I still go slow. Nan goes slow with me. At the top, we watch the light change over the city. We do not talk much up there either. That is one of the things I love most about her. She's comfortable with quiet. I want to tell you about my last visit to Manchester because it is when I finally understood why I have kept this whole thing quiet for 12 years. I went home in April of this year. 6 weeks as usual. I stayed at Andrew and Rebecca's. Olivia is nearly 4 and she's a full person now with opinions and a favorite jumper and a running joke about the fact that I say our kid when I'm tired. I did school runs. I did nappy runs before Olivia was fully out of them. I sat with Rebecca in the garden on a Saturday afternoon in Fallowfield and drank tea and heard about her work and about her mom, who has cancer now but is doing well on treatment. I saw my brothers and my sister in Bury one Sunday. David is 72 now and slower. Nearly 70 and still runs a pub in Ramsbottom on the weekends because he cannot sit still. Marie is 71 and looks after 2 of her grandchildren 3 days a week. They all wanted to know about Thailand. They always do. But it was Marie who said the thing that stopped me. We were in her kitchen after the roast. Marie was doing the washing up. I was drying. She looked out the window at the grey berry sky and she said, "Colin, are you happy over there?" I said, "Marie, I am." She said, "Colin, would you come back if something happened to one of us?" I said, "Marie, in a heartbeat, you know that." She said, "I know that. That is not what I mean. I mean, would you move back?" I stood there with a tea towel in my hand and I thought about the answer honestly. I said, "Marie, no, I would come. I would stay for months if I had to, but I would not move back." She was quiet for a bit. Then she said, "Good." I said, "Good." She said, "Colin, do you know why I have not asked you that in 12 years? Because I did not want to hear the answer if it was not that one. And I was worried you would answer wrong out of guilt. I said, Marie, I would not have done. She said, I know, but I was worried. I stood there drying a dinner plate in my sister's kitchen at 70 years old, and I understood something I had not put words to before. I have kept this whole thing quiet for 12 years because I was worried about the same thing in reverse. I was worried that if I told everybody how good it was, they would think I was rubbing it in. Or worse, they would think I had gone soft or foreign or lost my proper self. Or worst of all, one of them would come and see it and be so envious that our relationship would change. And I would rather keep the relationship than win the argument. But standing in Marie's kitchen with a tea towel in my hand, I understood that the people who love me are not the ones I need to protect from the truth. They already know. Marie has known for 12 years. So has Andrew. So has Deborah, who I had not seen in 8 years and who I met for a coffee at Manchester Piccadilly on my last day. She looked at me across the table and she said, Colin, you look well, really well, I'm glad. I said, Deb, I am. She said, you look like the man I married before you went quiet. I said, Deb, I did go quiet, and I am sorry. She said, Colin, do not apologize. We both did. It happens. What matters is you came back, not to me, to yourself. I sat there with a cup of coffee at Manchester Piccadilly at 70 years old, and I thought about the 26-year-old signaling technician who had married her in 1981, with no idea what any of this would look like. And I thought Deborah was right. I had come back to myself, just not in the postcode I had started from. I flew home to Chiang Mai on the 15th of May. Nan met me at the airport. She hugged me and she said, Uncle Colin, was it good? I said, Nan, it was very good. She said, you are ready to be home. I said, Nan, I have been ready to be home since day 4. It is always day 4. She said, then let us go home. I want to tell you what a normal day looks like now. At 69, 12 years seen. Not the highlights, the normal. I woke up this morning at 5:42. Nan was still asleep. The light was already coming through the patio door. I lay there for a minute listening. A rooster somewhere down the lane. There is always a rooster somewhere in Nong Hoi, and I made my peace with the roosters years ago. I got up. My knee was a bit stiff because it rained last night, but nothing bad. I put water on for coffee. I stood at the kitchen window and I watched Kuhn Brassard next door come out of his gate with a broom. He's 76 now and still sweeps his front step every morning at 10 to 6. He looked over. I raised my hand. He raised his. That was our conversation, same as most mornings. I sat on the patio and I drank my coffee and I watched a small green lizard run up the trunk of the mango tree. There is always a lizard on the mango tree in the morning. I have been watching some version of that lizard for 12 years. Nan came out at 6:15 with her own cup. She sat next to me. She said, Colin, sleep good. I said, Nan, sleep good. You. She said, yes. That was our conversation for the first 15 minutes of the day. 12 years in Thailand, 8 years with Nan. We do not need more than that first thing. At 7:30, I walked to Auntie Knox's cart. She saw me and pointed at a stool. She said, Uncle, late. I said, Auntie, 7:30. Same as always. She said, late, sit. She fed me rice soup with pork and ginger and a soft egg, 40 baht, about 90 pence. I gave her 50 and she slid 10 back to me with one finger the way she has done for years, and I put it in my pocket, and she nodded. I walked back. I passed Uncle Prem on his wooden stool. He waved me over. He said, "Colin, Sunday, my daughter cook. You come. Nan come." I said, "We come." He nodded. Full conversation. I got back to the house. Nan had gone to the market. I read on the patio for an hour. Around 10, I put my helmet on and rode the scooter to Bangkok Hospital for my 6-month checkup with Dr. Anang. She has been my doctor for 8 years now. She took my blood pressure 3 times and grinned at me and said, "Uncle Colin, better than mine. Keep walking." I rode back through the mid-morning heat. I stopped at the fruit lady's stall. She had a bag of mangoes set aside. She said, "Uncle, good ones." I paid her 60 baht and rode home. That is a day. That is the kind of day I have most days now. Nothing dramatic. Nothing anybody would make a video about. I am a 69-year-old former signaling technician from Levenchom who eats rice soup in the morning and reads on a patio and has a wife who cooks at home and neighbors who nod at him and a daughter-in-law in Manchester who sends me photos of my granddaughter every Sunday. That is the whole thing. I want to say a few last things before we finish because I promised myself when I sat down to tell this that I would say them properly. I have kept this quiet for 12 years for 2 reasons. The first, I have already told you. I did not want to rub it in, and I did not want to change my relationships with the people back home who mattered. The second reason I have not said yet, and it is the honest one. I did not want more people to come. I wanted my quiet lane in Nong Hoi to stay quiet. I wanted Auntie Nog's car to keep charging 40 baht. I wanted my mango tree to keep dropping mangoes I could give to the neighbors. That is a selfish reason, and I know it is a selfish reason. That is why I am finally telling this. Because at 69, you start to understand that the things worth having are not the things worth hoarding. My neighborhood will change or it will not change based on much bigger forces than a video from an old Manchester bloke. And there are people watching this who need to hear it more than I need to keep it quiet. If you're sitting somewhere in the UK right now with a pension that feels too small, a flat that feels too cold, a life that has gone quiet, the way mine had gone quiet by 2012, I want you to hear this from somebody who was you. There are options nobody has told you about. Nobody at your GP surgery is going to mention them. Nobody at your local Age UK is going to mention them. Nobody on the news is going to explain them. But they are there. Thailand is not the answer for everybody. Thailand is my answer. It might be Portugal for you, though Portugal is getting harder for us since Brexit. It might be Spain if you sought the residency. It might be Malaysia. It might be Vietnam, which is cheaper than Thailand and harder to settle. It might be a small town in a warm part of Bulgaria. It might be Ecuador. It might be a paid-off caravan somewhere in Norfolk that suits you fine. The specific place is not the point. The point is that you have more options than you have been telling yourself. You are allowed to leave. That is the sentence I want you to sit with for a minute if you have never sat with it before. You are allowed to leave. At 57, at 63, at 69. You are allowed to sell what you have and get on a plane and see what the rest of your life could look like somewhere the sums work. You will not do it alone. Nobody does. Ray picked me up at the airport in 2013. Mali fed me chicken soup at midnight. Kun Prasert and Kun Malai rented me a house because they liked the look of me. Andrew told me to go. Deborah told me it was about bloody time. Mary told me our mom had said I had finally started living. Nan sat next to me on a patio for 8 years without needing me to explain myself. That is not luck. That is what happens when you go somewhere and you show up properly and you let people in. I want to mention one thing before I sign off. There is a book called The Honest Move that walks through the real numbers on doing what I did. The cities compared side by side. The visa systems in Thailand, Portugal, the Philippines, Malaysia, Mexico, Ecuador. How the healthcare actually works in each country. The traps that catch people in their first year abroad, including the one that cost me £20,000 on Koh Lanta in 2018. I did not have it. I put a lot of it together the hard way. Over pints at the Duke's, from strangers on forums at 3 in the morning, from Ray at his kitchen table. If you are seriously thinking about a move like this, it will save you months of stumbling and it might save you the mistake I made in year 5. There is a link in the description, no pressure. I just wish somebody had handed it to me in that Levenshulme flat. If this story meant something to you, if it reached you where you are sitting right now with the heating on too low and the same view out the same window you have been looking at for a decade, I would appreciate it if you would hit the like button and subscribe. I have more stories coming, real ones, from real people who thought their life was the one they had been given and found out it was the one they could still choose. My name is Colin. I am 69 years old. I retired from the railways at 57 in October 2012. I sat in a Levenshulme flat for a full winter watching telly and not knowing what day it was. In February 2013, I emailed a Yorkshireman called Ray and asked if his offer was still open. He wrote back within an hour. I flew to Chiang Mai in September 2013 with 2 suitcases and a non-immigrant OA visa. Mally made me chicken soup at midnight on my first night. Kun Prasert and Kun Malai rented me a bungalow with a mango tree. I met Nan at a birthday party in February 2016. We married in September 2022, 6 months after Ray died. Andrew and Rebecca had a daughter called Olivia in 2020. She's nearly 4. She calls me Granddad Colin, always both names. I kept all of this quiet for 12 years because I did not want to lose it. I am saying it now because I understand at 69 that quiet is not the same as safe. Some things get better for being said out loud, especially to the right listener. If you have been sitting in a small flat somewhere in the UK for a full winter watching telly and not knowing what day it is, that is your version of the letter I emailed Ray. Somebody is at the other end of the line, in some form, in some country, in some way. You have to send the message. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.